Very often I find that technology companies that are seeking to enter into really new markets or new arenas, in fact in markets that may not even exist yet, think about how they should do forecasting. How should they predict how markets are going to evolve, and how should they think about the future? So I have a suggestion to them that you should forget forecasting. You should actually think about backcasting. So what is backcasting and how is it different from the traditional notion of forecasting? Forecasting assumes that you know the present, you know where you're at, and you're trying to predict what the future might look like. So it's extrapolative. It takes the present as fixed and the future as something that you want to discover. But because the futures are so uncertain in technology markets or new arenas, but more importantly, because the future is really what you make of it, as Alan Kay once said, the best way to predict the future is to invent it. So the notion that I want to talk about in backcasting is we begin with the future first. So we start with the future, which is not the future that might be, but the future that we want to be. It's the ideal future, it's the normative future, it's the desirable future. It's really how we want to see ourselves in the marketplace. So that's where we start, and then we work backwards from there to figure out what are the steps in order for us to get there. So that's why I call this backcasting, because it's forecasting in reverse. It's reversing the notion. Now what backcasting involves is, the first step that it involves is visioning. It's really envisioning the future, and this requires a creative brainstorming exercise where you want to bring in customers, industry experts, and so on. And that allows you to paint a picture or a vision of the desirable future that you want to bet on. Now you may have alternative desirable futures, and therefore you might create multiple visions, but at any rate what you really want to start with is that vision. Then what you want to do is to work backwards in steps or stages that it will take to get you there. And in that process, what you realize is, as you come to the present, is that there's a disconnect between what you need to do to get to the future and the current trajectory that you're on. And that points you to where you need to innovate, what are the dimensions or directions along which you need to create breakthroughs in order to get there. So the benefit of taking this backcasting approach really is that you can drive towards a future that you want to make happen. You can actually shape the future instead of accepting the future. So for example, if you think about what Boeing is doing in its military business, they want to paint a picture of a very different view of thinking about warfare. And this is the notion of network-centric warfare or future combat systems, which essentially means that warfare in the future will be conducted essentially by thinking about the different weapon systems as nodes on a network that can all be centrally controlled and commanded. Now the problem is that these combat systems don't exist yet. So what Boeing tries to do is to visualize what this future of warfare or the battlefield might look like. It creates simulations and rooms where it brings in the generals or brings in the lawmakers to sort of paint a picture for them. And then what they do is to try to shape or influence the direction of the funding or the weapons programs that sort of move them towards the desirable future. So this is something that Boeing calls market shaping strategy. And according to them, if we wait till the requirements are written or the contracts are put out, it's too late. We need to get way ahead of them. We need to get ahead of our customers and actually shape the pathways to getting there. So to me, the concept of backcasting really places a challenge on technology companies to be more proactive, to actually think about the future that they might want to create. Say, if you're Microsoft, you think about the office of the future or the small business of the future. If you're Allstate, you think about the insurance company of the future. If you're a realtor or a real estate developer, you think about the condominium of the future or the dwellings of the future, and then try to shape the pathways in order to get there. If you do this proactively, you have a better chance of actually driving your customers and your partners towards what you want to make happen, instead of just waiting for whatever might happen.